What if the person you're meant to lead isn't your team, your company, or your community, but yourself? In this episode, I talk with Miki Feldman Simon, an executive coach and author of Core Leadership, who grew up in a household where money was about chasing the next big thing and proving worth. After moving from Israel to Australia at age 12, then to the United States where she couldn't work for 2 years, Miki discovered something powerful. Leadership isn't just about managing others, it's about showing up intentionally in every moment of your life, including in your kitchen, with your family, and with your money. She shares her core framework: clarify, operationalize, reflect, and evaluate. A process that helps you move from living on autopilot to asking yourself in every challenging moment, who do I want to be right now? If you've ever felt pulled along by other people's priorities instead of your own, or wondered how to align your actions with what you say matters most, this conversation will ground you. Listen in.
Welcome to Making Change with Your Money, a podcast that highlights the stories and strategies of women who experienced a big life transition and overcame challenges as they redefined financial success for themselves. Now here's your host, certified financial planner, Laura Rotter.
Welcome, Miki, to the Making Change with Your Money podcast.
Thank you, Laura, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And I'm excited to see where this conversation takes us.
Yes.
My first question, as always, is, Miki, what was money like in your family growing up?
So I'd say I'm lucky that I never lacked anything, right? There was always, there was food, there was basic things, but my mother was a nurse. My father was a business person, an entrepreneur. And he was always looking to making the millions, was chasing like the next big things. And when I was young, we lived in Israel till I was 12 years old. And then we moved to Australia because my dad saw that as the next sort of land of opportunities. And he was hoping to make his millions there. And so there was always this wanting more, you could say, the sort of atmosphere in the house. And my mum was the steady income as a nurse. And my dad, who at times I think was not bringing in any money, still saw himself as the main breadwinner. And there was definitely, I would say, it was not an abundance mindset kind of home. And it also, I think I was 13 years old when I started working, because I think at the time it's like I wanted a pair of boots or something. So we had the basics, but if I wanted anything else, then it wasn't an option for my parents. So I created those options for myself by going to work.
Interesting. And Miki, would you say that I know you now for what you do. Did you always have an entrepreneurial instinct? Is that something you feel like you took from your father?
Yeah, I definitely. It's like, look, my father was a complex person. I'm trying to phrase this as the positive. He was a chauvinist. We did not have a good relationship. I did not appreciate how he treated my mother. And I did not want to be like him. My mum did not have a strong character. I have a strong character. I think I was more like my father in some ways. And definitely that entrepreneurial spirit lived in my house, right? It was part of how I grew up. But I think a lot of work and the work that I've done, the book, a lot of things were from my constant drive to sort of to be a better person and not be like my father.
Oh, that's a complex statement. I'm not sure I'm going to go there yet, but it's clear just from that statement, Miki, that you have internal drive, and that has propelled you throughout your professional and personal journey. So our listeners hear that there was already transition in your life from the age of 12 on, moving to a completely different country. We briefly discussed that you've gone through a number of transitions in your life. Please share what, is top of mind for you that you'd like our listeners who themselves are in a life transition to know about you.
Oh, so I made a few other transitions. Maybe I'll just sort of walk through for people just to know a bit more about who I am. So when I finished high school, I went back to live in Israel on my own, and I went back to Australia for a little bit before university in Israel. I married an Australian guy. So I imported him from Australia to Israel. I started studying there, and we actually ended up in the US. I've been here for over 28 years. I know you don't hear that from my accent. So that was definitely another transition. And we moved here. My husband started his own company, and he was in the US more than in Israel at the time. And we had a son already. I also started a couple of companies in Israel at the time. But I was also a single mum. I was operating like a single mum. He would be away for 3 weeks at a time. On a good day, he would get home at 11 o'clock at night because he was working with the US on US hours. On a regular night, it was like 3 in the morning. And we came to the US for 1 year, so basically to improve our family life. And at that point, what I didn't realize is that I would not be able to work when we got here. I thought that I'd be able to continue working with a certain visa. It could not happen. And
I'm
that
going to
was
stop you for a second. What were you doing when you were working?
so good question. So you know what, I have to share this as well because I listened to one of your podcasts, Laura, and the first thing, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I studied. We're going to go off in a tangent, okay? The first thing I started to study, and that was still in Australia, is fashion design. And I always, yeah, I know, I always liked clothes. I used to make my own clothes during high school, and that was like the first thing that I tried. And it's become a hobby. Realized very quickly that is not my career. But then when I started university in Israel, the first thing that I started studying was management and economics. And I was studying calculus, and it was like, what am I doing here? This is not anything that I want to do in my life. And I heard you talking in one of your podcasts about the fact that when you were studying math, it became more philosophy, and you're like, what am I doing here? And I was the opposite of that. So I went to study psychology and education, and the last year of my psychology degree in Israel, you do a practicum in the field, and I worked with people who were mentally ill. And then it became very clear I will not be a therapist because, I take things to heart. I took everything on too much, and it was clear to me I didn't want to take responsibility for people's lives. I did a master's in organizational behavior, and really all those years in Israel, I worked in the HR field. I brought employee assistance programs, the whole concept to Israel. And was working. That was my work then.
Thank you. So you can already see the journey. Well, I'm not sure how the fashion design fits in, other than something you enjoyed as a hobby. But like this journey of discovery that led you to, again, working with humans, but not responsible for them as a doctor or therapist.
Yeah. And we'll get back to that later, by the way. You'll see how it connects. But anyway, so when we came here, I had to stop. And that was really hard for me. I was 30 years old. I felt like I was in the peak of my career, and that was not a planned stop. And what happened a few months into being here is we also decided we're going to stay here because our life, our family life was so much better. And as a value, our family came first. And it took about 2 years until I could get a visa. I had our second child during that time, took a whole lot of different courses, different things. But seriously, the moment I got my green card, I was back at work in HR. And I took another break in 2015. And by the way, afterwards, I held other roles as well. I am a lifelong learner. I love learning new things. I was head of operations for an educational company. Before that, the first job that I had here was in HR, but in a company called Phonetic Systems, and they were in telephony. And I was seriously bored out of my mind by the field because it was all switches and things, and I was just not interested. I was grateful. It was my first job here in the US, etc. But so the next thing I was like, okay, I want to contribute beyond my role. And this was an educational company where my background in education and psychology was very impactful. And then I became a head of marketing at another educational company. So you can see I didn't just go in one trajectory. And then we
I'm just sort of curious, Miki. So operations, marketing, HR, what's the through line in Miki? Like, are you a big picture person, so that turns you on? What do you think you bring to each role?
I think my curiosity comes into it and wanting to learn new things, to try, like I'm open to opportunities to trying things. And I also think I know my strengths. So when I was head of marketing, I knew that digital marketing, I didn't know much about digital marketing, but I knew the market really well. And I was really good at seeing things from others' perspective. And in marketing, that's what you need. You need to see how is this going to come across to other people. So I hired a really good digital marketer in my department that will make up for my weaknesses, if you want to think about it. But I embraced my strengths and my curiosity.
And do you think that's also what helped you in HR, the fact that you could have empathy or understanding how others thought? Again, trying to see the connection.
It's interesting. I think there is something about people. I'm very interested in people, right? I'm always fascinated by what ticks people, by, watching people. So people interest me. And it's funny because it's like my husband is not that kind of person, but I'm fascinated by human behavior. And by the way, I think throughout my career, whether it was HR or marketing, whatever, I always interviewed people. And one of the things that people would say to me afterwards, we'd sit, let's say, in a management meeting and talk about the different candidates. And I had come out with things that they would say to me, Miki, how did you get that out of them? Like, how come they told you all of that? And when I really thought it, so at first I dismissed it, right? And this is, by the way, one of the things that I talk about in my book that we'll talk about is really embracing and understanding your strengths. And thinking of compliments that you get and not just like, okay, yeah, I thought it was that everybody would talk to people like that. But what I understood is that one, I created this psychological safety with the people I was talking with. So they felt like they could share things with me. And when people shared something, often, if you've ever interviewed somebody in an organization, people just like, okay, they ask a question, they tick a box, and I know how to, but tell me more about that, to really dig more and understand the things behind it. And those are the qualities. I'm an executive coach today. And if you think about it, those are the qualities that I also brought into my coaching.
Thank you. I mean, curiosity is a top one. I don't know how old your kids are. I try to say to my kids who, are in positions to be networking, it's like, be curious about other people. And it doesn't come naturally to everyone to be curious about other people. So that really is a strength in addition to liking people. That's also
Yeah.
a
Can I
good.
add something to it? So, by the way, an exercise that if anybody is thinking they're not clear about their strengths, one thing that I recommend to people, to my clients as well, is ask at least three people who know you well, what are my strengths? And I did this exercise, and my kids are now 25, and my son is 31, just turned 31 last week. My daughter's about to turn 26. She was late teenager, just before she was 20. And I asked her, what are my strengths? And she wrote back to me, Ima, which is mom in Hebrew, you have simple solutions to complex situations. I was like, whoa, okay. I never thought of that one. And it has stayed with me all these years. And she's right. And it's like I can see the root cause of situations and I can think of the opportunities and what can be done. And again, skills I use in my coaching. But if that's something that you are not sure of, I really suggest for people to get really clear on their strengths, because when you build on your strengths, that's when you can really become amazing, excellent. Not just we often tend to just work on our weaknesses, but when we build on our strengths, that's when we become amazing. And when you get into a conversation, when you know what it is that you are bringing to the table, what you have, what are your strengths, it gives you so much power and so much confidence.
I love that. Thank you for emphasizing that. I know I've taken in the past Strength Finders, I think is one of those, online things you can take. And and I'm about to do it again. I have reached out to friends in the past, but it's probably a little under a decade ago. And so I'm sort of curious to see what new friends might
I'll
say.
add, can I add another resource?
Sure.
So I really like Patrick Lencioni's Six Geniuses. So it's one of his latest books. And what I like about this one is, one, it's related more to work. Okay. So it talks about the geniuses that you bring into the workplace, and there is like wonder and invention and discernment and galvanizing, enablement. There's six different ones. It also tells you what frustrates you, which I also think it's important, because it's like, let's say we take on a new job. You don't only want to take on a job that the main thing you'll do is the thing that frustrates you. And I loved his, apart from, he's a great storyteller. It empowered me to think about my strengths through that perspective as well. And I highly recommend it.
Thank you. I will put that link in the show notes, in addition to a link to your book. But I know I interrupted you when you were going to talk about your 2015 transition, and perhaps that will segue to where you are now.
Okay. So I have interrupted you many times, so Laura, feel free. So 2015 was a challenging year. My mum in Australia had Alzheimer's, My father-in-law was very ill, and we decided that we had a window of opportunity. We could go back there and spend some time with them. My daughter was in high school, my son was here in college, and my mother did pass away a couple of months after arriving there. Um, we came back to the US. It was, it's a tough year, especially you go away and people say, "Oh, you spent the year in Australia. How was it?" Oh boy. Um, but it's when I came back, so I left that head of marketing job before I left, and I came here, and I'm like, okay, what am I going to be doing next? And I have to say, I was very privileged. My husband kept on working while we were there in the same job. And I had an opportunity to sit down and think through it. And I started a company called I'm Back at Work to help women who've taken career breaks into help them get back into the workforce. There was something in me growing up in a chauvinistic household, and I think that what you talked about my intrinsic motivation and whatever, a lot of it came from pushing and fighting back on what I heard at home. And there was something, I think, after my mum passed away, it was really important to me to help women. My parents divorced when my son was born, so very late on in life. And I think a lot of it, my mum, though she was a nurse, did not feel that though she had the financial security, the confidence to leave. And by the way, one thing that always led me is that, I'm married to an amazing person. We've been married for 33 years. That I will always be able to stand on my own feet and be able to provide for myself, because I did not want to be in a situation where I couldn't leave. So when talking about finances, that was something that was always really important to me. So I started I'm Back at Work to help women return the workforce. It's something that I have done through all my different career breaks. We didn't mention some of them. And I live in Lexington, Massachusetts. It's an affluent town where a lot of women took career breaks and then struggled to get back. And that started my coaching career, because I started coaching the women, and then I went back to basically to the corporate world and started coaching executives, and that is what I do today. So I'm an executive coach, and I work with men and women. I still have this great passion to helping women. And through this work came the book as well, which is Core Leadership.
Wow. First of all, acknowledge all the changes in your life. And yet, Miki, I do have a sense of that your strengths, who you are, felt to you like now you look back and you can feel a consistent path of like how one step led to the other. And so when you were coaching women, so you started that around sometime
2016.
2016. So, and when that started, that just felt natural, almost as you were describing, strengths, like this was something you were meant to do. How did it?
I'll go back to, do you remember when I said that when I studied psychology the last year that I didn't want to work with mentally ill people? Coaching is working with healthy people. It's doing similar work, but it's very forward thinking and not taking responsibility for people's lives. So I feel it's like I came back a full circle and found that niche of what I was meant to do in the field and everything else.
Thank you. And isn't that a wonderful feeling that so many people never have, that like this is what I am meant to do?
Yeah.
So I know you to be mission driven, and I believe part of that mission was actually sharing the knowledge that you've gained. So please speak to what was the catalyst for publishing a book? Not an easy thing to do. And what do you want us to know about the book?
Okay, so I actually didn't set out to write a book. Like you, Laura, I'm part of the recognized expert group, and I joined in 2022. And at the same time, I also joined a Marshall Goldsmith program. And both were asking, like Marshall Goldsmith, like, what's unique about your work, about your coaching? And Dory Clark's always asks us, what's your breakthrough idea? And at the time, I had all these different ideas. I knew that I was working with my clients on their values and what actions they're going to take. And we're doing a lot of work thinking about how they get in their own way. And as part of my coaching, I do 360 interviews, I gather feedback on people. So it was all sort of these different ideas and different things of what I do. And then one day on a run, it suddenly hit me that what I do is a process, that there's a framework there, core, which stands for the C is clarify. So clarify your values, your priorities, your strengths, what success means to you. So at the end of it, you really have a vision, a statement of who you want to be. We always talk to people about what you want to do. We don't talk enough about who you want to be. And when you have all those things clear, it is just so much easier to show up with intention, with authenticity. You get purpose out of it as well. Out of that, it's like people often search for purpose, but when all those things are aligned, you have purpose in your life. So that's the C. The O is operationalize, and basically we're turning intention into action here. So, we're very good at talking, but not so much about doing. So in operationalize, we look at the habits that are working towards our goals, towards our values, our priorities, and the ones that are not. We look at accountability. So we're turning intention into action. In reflect, we look inside and at how are we getting in our own way? Because we all get in our own way. Yep. And we look at the patterns like your negative self-talk, your triggers, the energy that you're bringing, all those, your limiting beliefs, all those different things. We look at that and understand how that's holding you back. And the E for the evaluate is, it has two aspects to it. One, evaluating your progress. Okay, am I really walking the talk? And the other part of it is we judge ourselves by our intention, but other people judge us by our behavior, by our actions, by the impact. So it's about gaining feedback from other people so that you really understand, how am I coming across to other people? So what kind of impact am I having? I think I'm direct. Well, maybe other people think I'm aggressive. And that's often like that. We have our intentions in mind, but we come across differently. So it's core, clarify, operationalize, reflect, and evaluate. When that came together, Laura, and it sort of, I could see the impact that the framework could have on other people in helping them live more intentionally, authentically. And it took a life of its own. It became like a message that I felt like I had to get out there. And that's how the book came about.
You are not the sum of your earnings. You are the sum of your yearnings. If you're ready to use wealth to create more freedom and flexibility, let's align your finances with what matters most. Together, We'll build a plan that balances your scarce resources of energy, time, and money so you move forward with clarity, confidence, and less stress towards a life of true abundance. Learn more at www.trueabundanceadvisors.com and schedule a short conversation.
Came back to also my definition of success, okay? And I think that's something you ask people sometimes.
Yes.
But success for me earlier on in life was a lot about money, okay? Because that's how I grew up. It was, make as much money, whatever. And when I defined success, I really realized that for me, it's about the impact, the positive impact I want to make in the world. And I felt I was doing that through my coaching. I was transforming people's lives, but the book could have so much of a bigger outreach impact and on people who can't afford coaching. And it just became something that had to happen. It was just like, from an idea, this is going to happen. And I'm very determined, and it did.
I want to reflect on several things you said, Miki. First of all, I love this idea of the book almost having a life of its own. I'm reading this book based on the Bhagavad Gita by Stephen Cope called The Great Work of Your Life. And one of the things he says actually is that when you approach writing a book, you have an idea, like you're the author, you have an idea, but the book has a life, and the book has a life of its own. And you may write something and that's not consistent with the book and you'll have to rewrite it. So I'm curious just quickly what that experience was like of writing. Was it a flow? Does that resonate with you at all?
Look, I'm not a writer. Okay. So it was like, I wrote a blog before. I went into it and I remember people asking me, so when is the book? And I don't know. I don't know what it's like to write a book, right? But I used core on myself and I really sat down and tried to think, first of all, what's going to work for me? Because core is very much about you understanding yourself and what you want and what will work for you. It's not about get up at 5 a.m. and make your bed or whatever, because for me to get up at 5 a.m. is shoot me, okay? So it's for you to understand what works for you. So what I actually did is, this was 2 years ago. I tried to sit down and think what will help me get the book going. And thinking back about other big things in my life, it was quite clear to me that I need like a big push. Like when I became a coach, I went and I did the first thing was a whole week immersion program, because I need that big thing. So I rented a house in California for
Wow.
2 weeks in the middle of nowhere. I had in my mind the environment that I knew would help me. And at the same time, by the way, a friend of mine was renting a flat in Chicago because that's what inspires her. For me, that would just be like, dark and whatever. So I went for 2 weeks and took my dogs with me because, I was in the middle of nowhere. I sort of really was clear on what will help me do this. And I did a brain dump. And that was the first of a really shitty first draft. And it was just, but I had something. Okay. So I knew the framework before, like I knew it was going to be core, and I had something, and then I reworked that. But by the end of that year, so I gave myself goals. By the end of that year, I sent a draft copy to some beta readers to get feedback from them. Also, if you think of core, the evaluate part, okay, let's get some feedback in there. How am I doing? And And then there was a whole lot of other iterations, working with an editor and getting a whole lot of other help to get the book out there.
Quite a process.
Are you thinking of writing a book, Laura?
I am not thinking of writing a book. And we're in groups together where it comes up a lot. And I've had people reach out to me. Do you want to write a book? I have no desire to write a book.
But Laura, you know what? At the end, I really enjoyed it. And it surprised me because I had no idea what this would be like, but I enjoyed the process. Maybe it was learning another whole new world. It was really digging into all these different concepts and learning more. And I loved it. And
It like it
I'm proud of
energized you.
what's that?
It energized you.
Yes, it energized me, and I'm really proud of the end result. So
You should be. I'm going to ask you to talk a bit more about your definition of leadership. It strikes me that this core framework can be used in many different ways. I mean, even with money, one of the questions I ask my clients to clarify is if you're told by your doctor you have 24 hours left to live, who did you not get to be? Right? Because just like you said, everybody's, oh, I didn't get to do, but who did you not get to be? So many of us never even answered that kind of question. So, what's your definition of leadership, and how can this be used for people who might be listening and say, I'm not a manager of people, I'm not a leader?
So, first of all, the whole concept of the book is that leadership starts with leading yourself. And I think of leadership as something that happens everywhere. It happens in your kitchen, it happens with your family, it happens in everything that you do because it's in how you show up. So, I don't see leadership as just the leading other people. And one thing that's very clear, if you're not going to be intentional in how you lead yourself, you're going to be managed by other people's priorities, by other people's habits, and you're just going to be pulled along. And at the end, you are going to ask yourself, like, where did I get to what? And there's lots of regrets. But this leading yourself really is for everybody to be intentional about the kind of person that you want to be. Think about, again, when your values are clear, you're operating from a different place. Your priorities are clear. You know where you're going. It's so much easier to make decisions when your values and priorities are clear and you know like who you want to be. It's like, okay, I know that family comes first. What is that going to look like? Okay. It's painful sometimes, the decisions, but they're easier because it's very clear to you what you believe in, what you prioritize, and how you want to show up. So that leadership shows up. I see it as if you're alive, and let's say if you're an adult, because I think as a child you still, you are being led by your parents, but it's I see it as our job as more like our responsibility to sit down and to think like, who do we want to be so that we can lead with more values, with more integrity, rather than just get pulled along by other people.
I so agree. So many of us just sort of live unconsciously and don't take the time to do the work and think about these things.
Exactly.
Again, in various aspects of our lives, like people who come to me about money, and I really do values exercises, deeper questions, like create a sacred space for a real thought process, and not just like, how can you make my money grow? Like, why? Why do you want your money to grow? What's important to you? What do you want to do with it?
So can I add to that?
Please.
So what I find is that when we do the why work and the values, and let's say we want to create change. And if I give you an example from my work, we get feedback on somebody, whether it's they need to delegate more or they need to be more present, whatever it is. Once we connect it to the values, we now have an intrinsic motivation. You're not, because you can't change people. You need to want to change yourself. Now, when I connect that delegation, let's say, so one of my clients, he really believed in his growth, in growing his team, and he was struggling with delegation. But when he saw delegation as an opportunity for growth for his team, rather than before he started, I'm just piling on more things. Oh, suddenly he was very motivated to delegate because he had that, it aligned with what he believed, and he had suddenly had this intrinsic motivation to live and do that. And it wasn't just something that needed to get done, whether it's for work or because, that's the thing that Laura says I should do to make money. No, this is something I really want and believe in.
Thank you for sharing that. So, Miki, you've answered the success question. So, as we're coming to the end of our conversation, what is it that you feel you'd like to share with our listeners, both from perhaps exercises that might speak to them in the book or other thoughts you might have?
So I would say take that time, like you said as well, take that time to think about who you want to be. And a big part of it, we think about who we want to be is in the moment, take a pause, take a deep breath, especially if you're in a stressful situation, so that you can respond rather than react. We're on autopilot, right? We're trying to change that, just that we are run by our habits, and take a pause and think about who do you want to be right now. Because sometimes it's easy to go to just think about who you want to be, and it's more theoretical. But when it comes into the moment, in a challenging moment, think about who you want to be right now in the moment. If you think about money, do I want to be the person who is going to buy an expensive something, or do I want to be the person who'll spend time with the family? Or what choice do I want to make now that will be aligned with the person I want to be?
Beautiful. And as you just said, Miki, it's easier said than done. Something almost to have a post-it on one's computer or mirror to remind you. I love that. I guess I do want to share what's been coming up for me is along those same lines, thinking about what your priorities are, making sure they align with your values, and making sure they align with what you're actually doing. So many of us say, my family is my priority, or writing this book is my priority. Do you make time in your calendar? Do you take those 2 weeks to go to California? No, you just know that like you're going to write this book someday, and to actually what was it that you
Operationalize it.
operationalize? And that's been like top of mind for me, of just making sure I look in my calendar at the beginning of each week, let alone at the beginning of each day. And are you actually operationalizing what you say is important to you?
And I think an example I actually give in the book as well, it's like, okay, so what would your credit card statement or your bank account statement, what will that say about your priorities?
Yeah,
So it's like, again, let's evaluate, how do your actions actually align with your values, with priorities, with what you're saying?
exactly. So your book that just came out is Core Leadership. It's available on Amazon, in digital and in hardcover. And if we didn't make it clear, I want to repeat that it's not only for people who, quote, are in management positions, but we are all leaders in our own lives, and we can all benefit from this work. Thank you, Miki, for being my guest.
Oh, thank you, Laura, so much. This has been a really interesting conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Making Change with Your Money. Certified financial planner Laura Rotter specializes in helping people just like you organize, clarify, and invest their money in order to support a life of purpose and meaning. Go to www.trueabundanceadvisors.com/workbook for a free resource to help you on your journey. Disclaimer, please remember that the information shared by this podcast does not constitute accounting, legal, tax, investment, or financial advice. It's for information purposes only. You should seek appropriate professional advice for your specific information.